true. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Hello, everyone, and happy Sunday. Welcome to another episode of Gloves Off. So I'm your host, Dr. Kalpana Sundar, and every week I do this show. Gloves Off is really a show about people who show up authentically in the world and do something courageous. But honestly, on another level, I feel like we're all out there with our gloves on, fighting against each other. And you know what? It's time to stop fighting. It's time to start appreciating our differences, and it's time to start living. So we should always come from a place of taking our gloves off, getting to understand other people. And that's a lot of what this show is about. So if you're new, thanks so much for joining us. And if you've been following along every week, I'm grateful to have you here again. Well, I am so excited about this week's interview because I love the idea of bringing the world together in as many ways as possible. So one of the great things about technology these days is that we are able to do that. So as you know, I've already had Wolfgang on twice from Germany. Then I also had Jessica Klingspoor last week from Barcelona, or Barcelona as they say. And now I have Sabine Messner, who is also in Germany at the moment. And I'm so excited to deep dive into her story. Now, if you have ever wondered what biohacking is, if it's for you, if it's something that can actually help you live a better quality of life, well, you're going to want to stay tuned and listen to this episode because we're going to get into all of those details. But before we do that, we obviously have to thank our sponsor for sponsoring us every week. So thank you, Elevated CPA, for being a Gloves Off sponsor. All right. Well, thank you again, Elevated CPA, for sponsoring Gloves Off every week. So as I said earlier, we're going to really get into what biohacking is. But first of all, did you guys know that Top Doctor magazine actually says that holistic care is rising to a level of Nobel Prize winning science? I'm like looking at that because I'm kind of in disbelief. It's just such a growing industry. And now we're able to really combine physics, chemistry, electromagnetic technology to create these amazing technologies that improve the quality of our life. And, you know, really, I don't know if it was such a big thing years ago because we didn't have such a big life expectancy. But now I know this month, actually, you know, I have another birthday coming up. And as I get older, I really want to preserve the quality of my life, you know, not just the quantity, but the quality. And I think a lot of us are on that wavelength of wanting that, you know, wanting to be vibrant as we get older. So Sabine has had her own personal story about why she got interested in this, but she's actually a director of a company called Centropics that manufactures something called the Centropics Kloud. But we're going to get into all that in just a couple of minutes, and you really want to stay tuned for this. So without waiting any longer, let's get Sabine on the camera to talk about her journey. Well, hello, Sabine, and welcome to Gloves Off.
Dr. Kalpana, thank you so much for having me, and schönen guten Abend. I'm here in the south of Germany where I grew up, and I'm at my mom's home, and I'm so excited that I get to have the opportunity to share firsthand, what this advanced frequency technology has helped us with all of our family members here.
It's so exciting. I know, because really, like I was saying earlier, I don't think so many of us, we obviously want longevity, but it's not just about living longer and living, in not vibrantly. We want to live longer and more vibrantly. So I really feel that that's where this innovative technology comes into place. So I know you've been interested in this kind of technology for some time. Can you tell us where or why you started getting interested in this?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've always been into, let's call it a holistic healing. When I grew up, I had a traumatic accident, and I began stuttering. And my mom actually consulted with a homeopath who took essentially homeopathy, which is the frequency, the vibration of plant medicine, to help cure me from really, a dramatic stutter condition. So since my very, very early childhood, I've been into, alternative healing modalities, homeopathy, of course, supplementation, preventative energy medicine. I studied even with Donna Eden and Dr. Alberto Villoldo, with indigenous people from all over the Americas, South America, North America. So you could say that I've always been into the woo-woo medicine, the woo side of medicine, and come to find out, fast forward, what we were sort of like, loved at, with our woo-woo energy healing, Reiki, and all of that stuff, is now cutting edge, confirmed by quantum physics and quantum science. And so I've come full circle that 2 years ago, when we found ourselves in an acute health crisis with my husband, that I manifested this frequency technology. And if I have a little time, I would like to share with the audience what actually led us to discover this technology.
Well, first, before we get into that, can you tell us a little more specifically, if you're willing to share, about the journey that you faced with your husband? Because I know the journey.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So exactly 2 years ago, August 2022, my husband, who had been on blood pressure and blood sugar medications for decades, found himself in a dire situation where it was almost like the perfect health storm. So firstly, his medication was no longer properly working. That happens a lot with that kind of type of medication. And then usually the solution is add another one to it. And so before you know it, you have multiple, medications. The other thing also that occurred is he had severe side effects that were affecting his vital organs. And then there were underlying health conditions, that were also, rearing sort of like their ugly teeth. So it was literally a combination of a lot of complex things, all really not leading to a positive outcome. And we were at the time consulting with a medical professional who basically said, if you want to go down that slippery slope, you're gonna face, more and more complications, and there could be also really tremendous long-term risks. And so he recommended that he should have really a dramatic intervention and essentially like give his body the chance to self-regulate. Now that was a daring proposition, and I was super freaked out. So was my husband, but he was willing to essentially take that chance and essentially rebuild his immunity. And at the time I was praying every day. You could also say I was, reaching for spiritual solutions. I was asking for support from the universe, if you so will. And when we do that, when we intend when we send our intentions, we ask for help. We also have to look for, signs. And coincidentally, right around that time, when I was like really intending on like, let us find a solution, let us have a positive outcome, I got a call from an old client of mine who I had not spoken to in years and years and years. And she was recovering from a very aggressive, health condition that, had overtaken her life. And she said to me verbatim, Sabine, I think you're going to like this frequency technology. You're into energy, you're into frequency healing, and this technology is from Germany. And I thought to myself, wow, what better way of the universe to sort of like lead me to the solution. So fast forward, my husband and I looked at the science, got on a few phone calls, and decided, you know what, we have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And so we purchased the Kloud Biocentropics. Here's the little mini. It also comes in the maxi. And within 2 weeks of using this frequency technology, we bought a whole second set so we could share it with others. Because what happened in just a matter of days is that in combination with a restorative healing protocol, he was able to get a really, really good handle on his values, and he was able to actually, and I don't want to go into any, medical claims or medical details, but he was able to restore a critical organ over time. But within already a couple of days, we saw tremendous results, and we were able to stabilize him. So that made us, of course, believers of this very, very advanced technology in molecular activation.
So I have some questions that are coming up for me. So the doctor that suggested this reset, was he in Europe or in the US?
He was actually in the US.
In the US.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
impressive, because I feel like in the US we don't do that as much, and we're not as a lot of times, a lot of physicians aren't very open to alternative things, so it's great that this was suggested by the doctor. And secondly, I love how you call it like the woo-woo side of medicine. So I just have to comment on that, because I remember in my early years of practice, I used to have patients coming in telling me that they were cured from allergies, this, that, or the other thing, using a lot of alternative technologies, and not alternative medicine, I meant. Whether it be acupuncture, this or that. I remember a couple of patients would come and tell me this. I thought they were crazy, completely crazy. And it's funny how over the years, I'm starting to get on the woo-woo side of medicine, because I truly believe that we should be integrating all of it, really, because sometimes we really need Western technology. Sometimes we need to use alternative Eastern technology. Sometimes we need to combine it all. So I think it's really great that you both were so open to it and had a very positive result. So before we get into some of those other things, I want to really just let's go back and talk about what is biohacking, because we hear that term all the time, and a lot of people are interested in that. It sounds so sexy, right? Like, woo, biohacking, I love that. But then a lot of people don't really know what it means. So if you can expand on that.
Absolutely. So we are at this incredible moment in the history of our, health and this entire medical system that we're all part of, where we are truly, truly, historical eyewitnesses, if you so will, to the birth of what I believe will be coined the biohack wellness industry. I mean, just the timing of our interview could not be more informative for your audience, because there is an entire global movement of people that are basically saying, you know what, we are going to take our health back into our own hands. You know, there is a time and place for, you know, pharmaceuticals and this entire medical, sort of like, complex. However, in my personal opinion, it's gotten way out of control. We have way too many people on way too many medications, and nobody seems to be either, you know, able anymore nor interested anymore to get to root cause analysis. And, you know, my stepdad was a doctor. And like I said, I mean, I grew up in Europe here, where the principles of a doctor were, you're not supposed to, prescribe medication. If you could get away with basically just, you know, giving some advice without prescriptions, you know, that was a success. Now it seems to be the opposite. You know, every time we see a doctor, we're ending up with infinite prescriptions and labels. And now people are saying, I have this and I have that, and complex autoimmune disease, all layered and piled on top of each other. So the biohack industry, the biohack global wellness movement, is a response and a quest for freedom, and a quest for, you know, true holistic support. And let's get back to root cause analysis, but also B, and that's equally important, is like, let's optimize, let's enhance our wellness. You mentioned it at the very beginning, and I think that you nailed it, truly, by saying we don't want to just have quantity of years. You know, when you look at like how poorly we're doing right now in the United States, we're on the 78th place in terms of our health. We spend the most on health insurance. We spend the most of all countries, you know, in the world on health products, medications, and we are on place 78, right next to Nicaragua. I mean, that is not exactly a success story for the United States. And so people want to also have quality of life. So that is the key. I think it has to do with optimizing one's wellness, no matter you know, the age or fitness level. You know, when you begin with the biohack, you know, wellness journey, you know, the sky is the limit, but also it is a backlash, if you so will, against perhaps also some of the weaponization of the medical system. And so I think that is what is the jet fuel right now to have people be interested in biohacking.
I love that. I love what you just said, that I have to repeat it because it was so beautiful, that biohacking is a quest for freedom. I mean, freedom to make our own choices. I feel like it's even about our own sovereignty in our own health and wellness. Because in this country, I feel like we're conditioned to put all our money into health insurance. Think of what message that sends to us, meaning we're going to put money into for when we get sick. I mean, that's exactly what that means. We're going to put money aside for when we get sick. It's almost like an inevitable. Well, I've changed that paradigm in my own mind personally. And I put all my money into not health insurance. I actually have just very little. I'd rather just pay cash. So I put money into my health and wellness. That's where I spend a lot of money because that's of greatest importance to me, not materialistic possessions, this or that. I feel like for me, life experiences are important. Well, I have to be healthy to enjoy those life experiences. Without our health, we have nothing.
We have exactly the same approach that you. We're basically so excited to know all of these biohack pioneers. I mean, I could tell you so many infinite stories of, for example, one of our, because I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, one of our incredible biohack wellness partners is a former major league baseball player who had a sports-ending injury that where he basically ended up with a biohack, a biohack technology that gave him another 7 years in his career.
Oh,
And
wow.
he has now the Kloud with all of his high performance, clients, but also to do the restoration, the regeneration. This is essentially what my husband and I did. We tapped into a very, very, very advanced form of biohacking where we're talking about accelerated cell regeneration through electromagnetic frequency support. I mean, is that futuristic or what? But that's essentially
Awesome.
what we did. My husband had an organ, actually multiple organs, but there was a primary organ that was beginning to shut down, partially also because of all of the underlying causes and symptoms that had not been properly addressed. They were masked with the medication. Meanwhile, his vital organs were withering away. That was not a recipe for longevity, or like what you were saying in the beginning, life quantity and life quality. And if we would have not had this divine intervention, which it truly, truly was, who knows if I would be already now a widow and what condition he is. But instead, we're traveling all over the United States, educating as lay men and women, educating our fellow people, including also doctors like yourself, professionals about the power of this frequency technology. The doctor who has a PhD in behavioral science, who basically, was the advisor of my husband at the time, he now is basically recommending the Kloud to all of his clients. So he is now a major, partner. And at the time, he did not know about that this technology even existed.
Well, that's so amazing. First of all, I have to go back to the sign that you received when you asked for a sign. Could it have been more specific? I feel like there was no misunderstanding the sign. Sometimes we get signs and we're not clear on them, right? But yours was really clear, especially the part because it was in Germany. I was like, okay, that couldn't be more clear. Secondly, as far as doctors go, we're not taught anything about this. We're not taught a lot of the things that are the truth. We're just taught how to diagnose a disease and just treat it symptomatically with medication. So unfortunately, so many of us didn't have that training, but I love that more of us are open to receiving this kind of information and integrating it into our practices for our patients. So I think that's wonderful.
I completely agree there. And actually what we're seeing here is a paradigm change. It's not like that the medical society was necessarily ill-informed, at large. It's basically also a new frontier. Like the way I see it now is that we, for the last many, many decades, 50 plus decades, have been taught that everything in medicine is a biochemical process / reaction. So you either take a medication, which seems to be, the primary thing to do when you're sick, you get a prescription, you take something biochemical. Most people don't know and will never understand what that biochemical process in the pill or tincture, or whatever they're taking, actually is doing. No, nobody's even asking about it. We're so far removed from actually what I call understanding, what's actually happening and what the processes in our bodies are actually designed to do and what we could do to aid them in terms of biohacking and wellness hacks. But what we're conditioned to do instead is basically just pop a pill or take a supplement or, preferably both, and then watch for hopefully a positive biochemical response. And now science is, thank God, finally bringing us to this point where we're actually seeing, no, wait a minute, we're not biochemical reactions at the level of our atoms and molecules. We are electromagnetic beings. And
Which
as
makes sense.
electromagnetic beings, even if we just get electromagnetic support without any other biochemical, add-ons, even just with proper electromagnetic support, Dr. Kalpana, biochemical responses and reactions are happening automatically because that's how the body is designed. In the olden days, naturopathic, holistic, chiropractors, et cetera, were taught that power that creates the body heals the body. Well, we have been very, very far removed from that, foundational truth. Come to find out, thank God for those biohacking, technologies, we're actually coming back around. So when we are taking the power back on that electromagnetic level, and then, yes, you can add on other things, all of a sudden you're looking at an incredibly accelerated wellness protocol that is actually shadowing, dwarfing all of these pharmaceutical things that we're taught to take. This is much, much bigger than just like, oh, here's a nifty little tool. This is what I'm here to tell your audience. This is a paradigm change. This is the birth of potentially also a huge industry. And actually, I just read this morning that the latest Nobel Prize went to somebody who is, into mRNA, et cetera. I believe that even that the pharmaceutical industry will not have even a chance to ignore that. They too will want to, move into this technology. In the meantime, we can really, fast track this process by getting our own wellness support through this frequency technology.
That is so amazing. And so I want to actually, I want to talk about e-smog because I feel like everything you said, because we're talking about support. So now I want to ask you, why do we need the support? And I feel it's primarily because of our environment, e-smog, but a lot of people don't really know what that is. So I'd love for you to expand on that.
So everybody knows what smog is, right? In the past, we had smog advisories, pregnant women, joggers, don't go outside on bad smog days. Now, I personally believe if we would have e-smog advisories, we would have to do dramatic changes. We would have to probably be evacuated of the planet because the e-smog has become so horrific. Now, our body is designed up to 200 hertz. So if you measure your organs, your physiology, the human body vibrates between, 1 and 200 hertz. However, we each and every one of us, even little toddlers, they all have their 5G phones and soon 7G phones in their hand. Well, this phone, in order to give us a geolocation, for example, when we're driving or, even just walking about, is connecting to 3 low orbit satellites, bringing in billions and billions and billions of hertz. We're not actually privy to the information, that's not necessarily something that's discussed or disclosed, just how much hertz we're actually pulling in. But the truth is, not only have we turned our body into an organic antenna, but actually now a satellite dish, which is actually even worse. So we're talking about the difference between a couple hundred hertz and hundreds, possibly even more billions of hertz. So when we're living in a city, or even if we're moving to the countryside, we're depending on satellite internet, we're pulling in essentially a frequency that is very, very, very harmful to the body. On the molecular level, this very, very fast frequency that's in the billions of hertz is essentially discharging the organic charge on the molecular level. So we're constantly, like a battery, getting depleted, and that's why we have young, I'm not going to say children. I mean, there can be young adults in their 20s that are suffering from chronic fatigue. And, so now we're labeling them as, I don't know, ADHD or depressed or whatever, but they could actually have what we call an e-smog deficiency where, because they've already grown up with all of these electronics, they don't have the same stamina and endurance that, older people have, like, from my generation. Right. But still we are affected as well. So we have younger adults not being able to concentrate. We have our elders having Alzheimer's and dementia. Mm-hmm. Could there be a correlation with all of this electro smog that was surrounded with. The average American household has 20 smart devices, making us potentially not exactly smarter. Could this be related? So I believe that we need to have more research into this equation of how much correlation is there between genetic damage, leaky gut syndrome, the brain-blood barrier that could potentially have to do with mental health, and the dramatic increase of electrosmog. And so in order to offset that, it has become, for me, I'm convinced now, because I've studied enough, I've seen enough changes in that are not positive in the health of my friends and clients and family members. Rapid decline that's almost unstoppable. And yet when we bring in the support of bioidentical holistic frequency wellness medicine, all of a sudden, they're beginning to recover. And I am now convinced that it's not a luxury anymore, Dr. Kalpana, to have that support. Just like how we charge a phone, we have to charge the molecules in our bodies, because the truth is, at the level of our atoms and molecules, we are electromagnetic.
Yes, and that is true. There are books about this. There's a lot of research supporting this as well. So just for the audience out there, we're not just making claims. There is a lot of research. I mean, there's a book called The Body is Electric, and there's all kinds of data on this actually. And as far as the e-smog, what, other than using a device such as this, are there any other things that people can do to protect themselves from becoming an antenna or a satellite dish, which I don't think any of us really want?
It's almost like, I thought about that a lot. I was like, how can I escape? Give me that escape button. And while we can't survive in a world where we're disconnected, and right. Even if we choose ourselves to not have all of these electronics, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no cell phone, even if we were to manage to somehow exist in that, we would still not be able to stop it, because we still have low orbit satellites that are getting, installed, and we're still being bombarded even through just the surroundings. Or consider the fact that every time you're in an airplane, you have unbelievable hundreds amounts of, every chair has its own Wi-Fi, and, and we're very, very close to low orbit satellites, we're getting constantly bombarded. We would have to live under a rock, which is not practical. So for me, the solution is what we call here at Centropics vibrational resilience. In other words, we believe that the body is actually extraordinary, and when we're considering all of the factors that are essentially working against us, how considerably strong we are as a collective. My head goes down to the divine vehicles that we get to live in. I believe that we will be able to find ways, but it does depend on electromagnetic support. We will be able to find ways to overcome that, and hopefully with more and more awareness, maybe we can also stop some of this bombardment or make it not so harmful to, by the way, also animals and organic life. This synthetic, artificial, globalization has definitely taken a toll. And I've had conversation with people who have a lot of experience in electromagnetic radiation, that it's undeniable, and we don't have enough of that conversation. So I really hope that we can raise more awareness on that.
Right.
E-smog is a true danger, and it can be the missing link to many of the problems that we're all facing right now.
I really, it's really become an issue. I wonder how much of that is really affecting our other things, not only our bodies, our climates and whatnot. Who knows? I think it's a real thing that needs to be investigated. So let's talk about, there's been older technology out there, with PEMF, and now there's PEMA. And a lot of people have probably heard about PEMF, which is the older technology. I believe the Beamer devices, a lot of people have heard of that. So if you can kind of explain what that is, how it's transitioned into the newer technology with the PEMA, what that really means as far as, the benefits people can achieve. So I'll give you a few minutes to go through that, because I think that's really interesting.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, I really appreciate that. So PEMF has actually been around for a good 60, 70 years. It was a very, very advanced, methodology that in the late, 80s and 90s, for the first time, became more popular, through the patent that Professor Dr. Kafka invented, that then became a global, worldwide phenomenon with the Beamer. So PEMF stands for Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy, PEMF. And if you want to go to pubmed.gov, there's over 20,000 studies that have been done, proven, number one, no harmful side effects of PEMF therapy, and countless beneficial, results. And classic PEMF basically utilizes a pulsed, mostly sinus wave that then, with a lot of like Gauss, which is essentially intensity, is being applied by, in local areas. And so PEMF is definitely known in the holistic wellness space as being effective, having positive outcomes, and it is also known for having to sometimes jolt people and vibrate people. And it's actually, I have to sometimes giggle a little bit, because we've come a long way, but the PEMF space is still used to fairly primitive signals with a lot of life force. And we have decided to really disrupt this PEMF space through much, much more advanced molecular activation technology. So we don't want to actually compete in the PEMF space anymore in that sense. We want to revolutionize the PEMF industry, which is why we're calling our technology PEMA, and that's called Pulsed Electromagnetic Activation. And we're talking about activating molecules. Our technology is mathematically proven to be 50 times more effective than the old gen PEMF technologies out there, 50 times. So what that means is that we have 3 patents. We have a much more complex field. So it's not just a signal, it's a frequency field that we envelope, the body in. And we have a deeper penetrating signal that immediately can go into, it can reach the molecules inside of the bone marrow and flat muscle layers, and without needing any force. There is no sledgehammer. Most people feel absolutely nothing you can lay on it, and you can kind of wonder, is something actually happening? It's oftentimes a very non-dramatic event, and yet everybody feels the result. You may not feel the frequency as it's doing something in your body, but you stand up and you move around and you go like, wait a minute, all of a sudden I can make a fist again where before I wasn't able to. I have no pain, where I lived with that pain for years and years and years. And many of those success stories have also played around with the old PEMF technology. But, 50 times more efficiency means that we can have in just a couple of sessions and or couple of days or weeks the same significant results that have taken other providers months to provide. It's absolutely staggering.
I think it's so impressive because, again, I have never been a fan. So I think, those older technologies, some of that stuff seems kind of gimmicky to me. It's just the way I've always been. If I have to shake and wiggle and like you got to prove to me something's happening, I'm not really a fan of that kind of thing. So I like this because I don't have all those weird things. I don't really want to experience that. And so then it's just a matter of it's doing its job correctly. So just to share a personal story, I was having some, random issues, mostly it was the muscle fatigue. I mean, and it doesn't sound like a major issue, but I'm very, very athletic. And, I'm doing martial arts and I'm just constantly wanting to push myself because I really love it. And at my age, I'm turning 55 this year. So my muscle recovery is not what it used to be. And so what happens is, it's one of my greatest joys in life to be able to do that. And when I get so fatigued with this muscle fatigue, I'm not able to go at it again. I have to take a couple of days rest, which is not what I want to do. So I primarily got it for that reason and to improve my sleep quality. So those are the two reasons that I wanted to get this. And I used it for about a week. And I was literally seeing some serious improvements, meaning that my muscle fatigue was really improved very quickly. So after a hard workout, I do all of this other body care too, but I would also use the Kloud in a mode called, that was more of a transformative mode and healing mode. I noticed that I'm able to work out now like almost 5 days a week and I take 2 rest days, and even they're not complete rest days most of the time. So that was an improvement. My sleep quality has improved significantly to the point where I don't have to sleep as long, but the quality of my sleep has improved. Then I started using it for all kinds of random things, meaning in the middle of the day, sometimes I get tired. I wake up early and I go. Instead of going for caffeine, I would actually use the Kloud on the energize mode. Then I didn't need caffeine. I would literally take a 15-minute break. It's okay. I lay on that and I'm ready to go. And more energy. Then, these are just I know these seem like minor issues, and I know people have much more major issues. I'm grateful I don't have any major issues. But the other thing was I started to get like a eczema type thing, and a weird eczema because, when we wear gloves, we sweat, so I started to get some weird stuff. And I just had this horrible eczema on my hand, and I was using all kinds of medication. And then I thought, what if I just put my hand on the Kloud while I do it, because I have the Maxi and I have the Mini. So I started putting my hand on that. It resolved in 2 days. I had been using medication for a week and it wasn't gone. 2 days and it was gone. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. So I was just really, really impressed, because I don't ever want to talk about something that I haven't used. So again, I can hear about it till the cows come home, but I need to feel it because I'm very... for lack of a better word, I'm very in tune and aware of my body. So I can feel a difference or not feel a difference. So I felt like I needed to share that because I had my own personal experiences with it.
And I totally relate to your personal experiences. The same happened for me as well. So I'm going to turn next year 60. And when the Kloud came into my life about 2 years ago, I was in this menopause slumber where I just lost a lot of my mojo. Not that I had any sort of health conditions, not to my knowledge, but I really felt like I was no longer myself. And with the Kloud, within just 2 weeks, I really felt like I have stamina again, I have motivation again, and I don't feel sluggish. I don't have brain fog. These are major, major life quality improvements. And given the fact that now I have a much busier life than possibly 2 years ago, because we're so on mission with this technology to just spread the word. We're traveling a lot. I take it with me on the plane. I can quickly share one more example with my mother. Last year I came to see her in fall, and she had a lot of water retention in both of her feet. So much so that she would have not fit into a winter boot. Can you imagine? She would have totally slipped, fallen. I was panicking when I saw her feet. And she survived 2 strokes and 2 hip surgeries. So clearly, she just celebrated her 86th birthday yesterday. So clearly, we knew there were circulatory issues. So within 2-3 days on the Maxi and the Mini, her water retention disappeared, and I left her with the Kloud sit. that she's been using herself every day. So basically, yeah, the issue is gone. And everybody tells her she looks fantastic. Yesterday, family members came, and they all told her, "You look younger every year," which made me really smile, because, nobody really believes per se that it is the Kloud, but, she and I were sort of like twinkle at each other, and we're like, yeah, well, obviously this is doing its job.
Well, we are a reflection of how we feel. I've been in the aesthetics industry for many, many years. So, first of all, I've seen through the 20 something years I was in the aesthetics industry, how when we look at ourselves, if we like what we see, it affects how we feel. And I actually believe the reverse is true as well, meaning if we feel good inside, we also tend to show that on the outside, our vibrancy, our energy, our spunk, that's the essence of looking good. Isn't only about physical beauty. I feel like it's part of it, but we have this gleam, the sparkle in our eyes, this energy. As we're talking, we're all electromagnetic beings. If our electromagnetism is at its best point, we are more vibrant. That's not something you can just see. It's something you can feel. And that's something I notice a lot in older people. Either they have that vibrancy or they don't, and my father is, 88 now. And I just look at him and I think, I can't believe you're 88. If I'm this good when I'm 88, I'm going to be grateful because, he's doing all the things by himself. He's completely self-sufficient. His brain is working in top capacity still. Of course, there's some age-related things that happen, but it's not very significant. So that's the thing. Again, we can be 88 and not be very vibrant and sluggish and not really able to do a whole lot, or we could be at the best we could be at that age. And to me, that's what I feel like life is all about.
100%. Yeah. I noticed a big improvement in her energy because, we're FaceTiming all the time, and in the past, she really only had the energy, the mood to just be maybe for 5-7 minutes with me max, then she would say, okay, that's enough for today. Now we're talking for 20-30 minutes and she's like she's talkative again, like the way I know her. So I know without a shadow of a
get her
doubt.
off the phone.
Exactly. I know that I am, I know that I'm definitely enhancing her life quality. And you said that at the beginning. I believe that I also prolong her life quantity, but not at the cost of quality. And the same is certainly true for my husband. I believe for myself, it's a preventative thing. You have the Kloud and you can share it with all of your people. And we only hear positive results. There isn't really anybody that said, like, you know what, I have to return this. I haven't really seen a positive improvement. Mm-hmm. Small or big, it's a cascading effect. Multiply that over many, many, many years. And then consider also the fact that as time goes by, the increase, the multiplication factor of this ear-smog, you don't want to go down that road, by just having it preventatively, you're already making one of the biggest contribution. So in closing, I do want to also say why the Kloud Bicentropics is now beginning to really be celebrated as one of the top biohack tools. So in the biohack industry, something is very, very important that I want to share with your audience, and that's called stacking. Because the biohackers, they're stacking different modalities. And in order to stack something, you have to have a solid foundation. So for example, we are stacking red light with lasers, cold lasers, or red light lasers. We're stacking cold therapies, cryotherapies with heat therapies, infrared sauna, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the more well-known ones. But now we're also adding hydrogen and oxygen and infusions and, hyperbaric chambers, and the list goes on. However, the more fancy and complex, it gets, at the foundation, at the root of it all, because the molecules are the building blocks of life. Everything is made out of molecules. Stem cells, the mitochondria, and that's a big deal. Everybody's into cell regeneration, cell optimization, performance optimization, etc., etc. We're talking about DNA repair. We're talking about the mitochondria. We're talking about the stem cells. Well, guess what? That's all made out of molecules. So we have the really truly the best in class, the most superior advanced molecular activation technology on the planet, triple patented. It's the inventor should be recommended for the Nobel Prize, quite frankly, in molecular activation. He has multiple, PhDs, and he is an expert in the behavior of molecules. So these frequencies are playing symphonies, harmonies to these molecules, really energizing, charging them so they can withhold the onslaught of all of this e-smog that surrounds us and that also penetrates us. So that's why the Kloud is really the most foundational. It always comes first. So put a person on the Kloud, then send them to the IV. We'll have them get an IV at the same time, red light, cryo, HBOT, whatever follows afterwards. It's the perfect foundation for a biohack wellness protocol. And the Biohack Yourself documentary is coming out in just a couple of months, December 2024 on Amazon Prime. It will be the largest health documentary ever released. There's going to be multiple parts. I'm hearing 3 parts, but part 1 is going to be released in December 24 on Amazon Prime. So look out for the Biohack Yourself documentary. And guess what? Our Kloud is part of that first Biohack documentary, and the producers, Teresa and Anthony Lawley, they even told us just last week that from all of the 30 plus technologies and biohack modalities that they've been introduced to, they like the Kloud the most. Why? They use it every day. It's easy. You push the button. You either lay it on you while you're driving your car, or, in the morning when you meditate and you set the intention for the day, or, when you watch a movie at night. It doesn't matter. You can put your dog on it. You can put your little child on it. It's so holistic and non-invasive and so good for you that, you can go into the day with your charged cells and charged molecules, and it's just so phenomenal. And then every time you add a session to it, you have that cascading effect to the point where you can reverse your biological age by years and years and years in just a couple of weeks.
I think that's amazing. And I just want to kind of finalize with 2 small details that people often say to me. Oh, isn't it a placebo effect? So, first of all, there's a lot of data on this and a lot of information that we can find. So we know that that's not the case. Secondly, I tend to go into these things not believing anything. So if anything, I'd have probably a negative placebo effect. I'm expecting not to feel anything, and then I was pleasantly surprised. The other big objection that I often hear about this, and this is fine, like to each his own, I'm not trying to, persuade people one way or the other, but people say, wow, it's costly. I just want to point out that medical care is also extremely costly, and a hospitalization is also costly. Surgeries are costly. Those things are way more costly. So I think it's always just the understanding of where you'd rather put your cost. You could put it in on the front end and really, not that I'm going to make any claims that it's going to prevent all these things, but what I can say is that for me, if I feel like I'm doing my best to prevent all those things, I'd rather put my money in on the front end rather than the back end, which is the insurance companies. So I've actually removed my money from that. So I feel like I didn't really have any extra cost, because what I would have been paying for health insurance, I feel like I'm instead placed in this Kloud, and for the longevity and vibrancy that I expect in the long term. So I think it's just 2 different ways of thinking about it. I always like to provide alternative ways to think about things. That's part of me. That's how I am. So I think this is so interesting, and I appreciate how much knowledge you bring to the table on this subject. I'm so grateful for you being here from Germany, and I love this. So I can't wait to hear what the audience thinks and comments. We can always watch this on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and obviously it streams on E360 TV. So thank you, Sabine. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts. We only have like another quick minute or so.
Yeah, speaking about the cost, I mean, for me, this has been a priceless gift. I can only thank my friend for having made that call, out of the proverbial blue. I can't imagine where I would be and who I would be if this technology would have not arrived at my doorstep. What would my husband's health situation look like? What would be my mom's health situation? It's
Right.
Perhaps they wouldn't be even here. I mean, that's the extent to what I pay credit to this technology. The other thing that I am infinitely grateful. It's introduced me to pioneers such as yourself. Without this technology, you and we would have not met. I wouldn't be talking with you. It's brought me also an unbelievable wealth opportunity, for everyone who is passionate about sharing holistic wellness with their friends and family and community. You actually also can get very, very handsomely rewarded. Not that that's something that you need to do, but I just want to, in closing, want to put it out there. It is also a financial, wealth instrument, because health and wealth, are, they go together. It's one and the same.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're almost out of time, but you have a fabulous rest of the evening. And thank you again for being a guest on Gloves Off, Sabine.
Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. I hope it brought some interesting information to light. And next week, I'm going to be interviewing Heather Wyatt. So we're going to be talking about to retreat or not to retreat, because retreats are becoming a big thing these days. And as always, I'm so grateful for you guys being here and enjoying another episode of Gloves Off. Please follow me on my YouTube channel, which is drkalpana.unbound, or also on LinkedIn under the same name. So the show streams there as well as on E360 TV. So have a wonderful rest of the evening, and I can't wait to see you guys next week on another episode of Gloves Off.